This is just a short overview of my Glidecam setup here. So I've done a couple modifications just to help me out when I'm trying to shoot with this thing. It's not the easiest thing to use. Since I've upgraded the size of my monitor, this is much better to see from a distance using the Vitronics 7-inch monitor. It's relatively cheap. And having the monitor down at the bottom eliminates the need for the actual weights, which are kind of sort of just dummy weights. And I counterbalance it with a battery for the monitor on the other side. And basically at the top here, the other thing was the sort of quick release plate. My systems that I use for all my tripods are the Manfrotto 501 plate. So this is actually a long plate in this holder here. And the long plate makes it much easier just to slide back and forth for balancing. So balancing time is cut down drastically. Now this is sort of the heaviest setup I have with it. It's a 11 to 16 millimeter Tokina lens with the Metabones adapter on the camera. Even so, I have to add a few washers on the hot shoe at the top. I have a little plastic block in between the pad of the Glidecam and the quick release plate. That's basically just so I can undo it here, because the problem was when I was using this, it would hit the plate. So I actually still had to sort of modify it a little bit and take a little bit of the edge off there, just so the clearance was enough to clear that. But also I noticed that I could sort of drill a hole through this piece of plastic here and add a long screw to sort of add a little bit of counterbalance here. I find after using it for about 5 or 10 minutes, it starts occasionally gets sort of a list either one way or the other, but it's so minor that adjusting the plate or adjusting something else is way too much of over adjustment for it. It's probably like micrograms just to get it back level. So I have basically just this little functioning thing here that kind of spins. There's 2 of them on there that I can bring into level. Yeah, I can have my HDMI cable going down into my monitor here. It's great for just looking down, and when I'm walking I'm not going to trip on anything because I'm looking down at my feet and seeing what's ahead of me, in front of me. So it really works well for traveling shots, walking down the street or something like that. Other modifications, these basically, when I first started out using the counterweights, they supplied some nuts that you have to sort of screw all the way down to the bottom before you check your weight. But I just have these sort of lock nuts that are pretty easy to undo. You just turn them and then they slide up. So instead of like having those other ones that are screw all the way down, and then when you realize you're not balanced, you have to unscrew them and bring them all the way up again. It just was, taking 10 or 15 minutes for nothing. These just basically fall down and then you tighten them up. And the same thing, you just tighten them and they come loose and you just slide them off. So these are a great investment, these sort of slip knot or slip tighteners for the Glidecam. I don't know why they don't have something like that included instead of those, here, if I have them here. These are the ones that are included. They're brass too, or whatever. But by the time you try to screw it down to the end here, and you realize, oh, it's the wrong, I have to add another one. That's like 20 seconds every time, and you do that 10 times, it's kind of a waste of time. So anyway, that's just sort of my modifications to help me out with speeding up the balancing of this. So I do have a sort of a lighter version when I'm using my, basically I have a 14 here, which has the autofocus. You can use the the Panasonic app with it to focus with a phone or something like that as well. With that one, I can sort of, take this larger 7-inch monitor out and put on my small HD monitor, which is a lot smaller and a lot less weight, and just use a smaller battery on the back as well. And that sort of greatly reduces the size or the weight of the whole setup. But using this one, I sort of had some bits and pieces laying around here. This is a sort of a arm extension thing with you can get these things at the pharmacy for your wrist in case you hurt your wrist. There's a piece of metal in there that keeps your wrist really solid. And I also have this sort of thing I found or sort of rigged up that fits right inside the handle here. So once it's in the handle and my arm's in the sling, it immobilizes my wrist so my wrist doesn't get tired. Now, that was the sort of big thing with this, is after 15 minutes my wrist is killing me. This thing you can easily go an hour no problem with without hurting your wrist. Basically all the pressure moves up to your biceps, so you end up with sore biceps instead of a sore wrist. The biceps seem to take the pressure a lot better than my wrist does. Basically, that is the sort of setup I have here. It's really great. It's really easy to set up. I can put it together in like 10 minutes and I'm all set to go. And I got a nice big monitor down there to look at while I'm moving. It really is a nice setup for me.